you've been doing a lot of critical coverage of the RNC with 2 pieces breaking down sort of the focus on the police and how closely allied they are with the police these days. And then most recently, I believe just today, about black speakers at the RNC and how they seem to have no real agenda in comparison to some of the others. So tell me a little bit about the experience of watching the RNC and some of your takeaways.
It's just been nightmare fuel, right? Like it's been every bit as bad as I kind of feared when I signed up for this job. But okay, on the ground level, what we have to understand is that the RNC, for all of their bluster and angry white manness and pro-Jesus rhetoric, has no actual solution to the problems that plague this country, and specifically have no actual solution or prescription or agenda to help the African American, Black, Latino communities in this country, right? Whatever you think about why it happens, right? Whatever, why cops shoot people, unarmed Black people, whether or not it's justified, in what situations it's justified, whatever you think about the kind of 30,000 feet macro level issues. What is undeniable is that Black people in this country are screaming out in pain and horror about a systemic oppression that we have all felt our entire lives. That is an objective truth. Now, what does the GOP have to address that objective truth? And if you listen to their convention, nothing. They've got no answer for that. And look, we can debate about maybe we need more transparency here. If we just think that they're bad apples, maybe a national registry of bad apples. Like there are things that we can do in the political context, in the left-right, conservative, liberal context, where we would have a debate about how best to address the problem. But the GOP refuses to acknowledge that there's a problem in the first place.
Yeah.
And that is why this country is at such an impasse. So when you look specifically to the Black speakers, I'm not gonna be one of those people that like tries to, I'm not gonna take away their Blackness. I'm not gonna name call them, with reference to Samuel L. Jackson characters in Django. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna focus on what they actually say. And when you listen to what they actually say, when you listen to the actual content of their speeches, again, it's nothing. It's vapid platitudes. When you listen to the white speakers, much as I might disagree with them, they've got an agenda, right? They show up like, I want more abortions, or I want fewer abortions. I want Jesus in schools. I want to be able to shoot Black people I don't like. Like they've got things that they want. They've got legislation that they want passed. What did the Black speakers ask for? Nothing. They didn't want any legislation passed. They didn't want any new, whatever they got out of Trump's first term, they didn't have any goals that they wanted out of his second term. They just were there to say thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Trump, for all you've done for our people. Like that's all they had. And that, from a content perspective, that is vapid and unhelpful. And that's what I focus on in my pieces.
There did seem to be a thread through, I'm not gonna say all of the speakers because last night I mostly checked out, but in some of the earlier speeches, it was sort of what you often hear from some of the online commentators like Candace Owens, you don't get to take us for granted. We each think as individuals, we support whoever we want, which would seem to be obvious that everybody gets to make that choice. But that was something that I saw being mentioned by multiple Black speakers so far.
What they're doing with that, and again, I don't want to overemphasize the potential effectiveness of this, but what they're doing with that is that they understand that there is, a small section of the Black community, particularly African American males, who are amenable to this argument that the Democratic Party has abandoned them, takes them for granted, treats them like a monolith. Joe Biden, if you ain't voting for me, you ain't Black, whatever the hell he said. And there are people who are angry about that, and thus are amenable to an argument that kind of voting for somebody different is itself a form of emancipation and proof that you're a free thinker, just by dint of you voted against type or against stereotype or whatever. There's a section of the community that is interested in that argument. I might be in that community that was interested in that argument if the Republicans had an argument. if there was something they were offering me, I might listen, but they ain't offering me crap, so I don't. But you understand there are people do that. And it's worth pointing out that the Democratic Party has, for the most part, and even with its current nominee, done a terrible job of addressing issues in the Black community, and especially issues in the Black male community when it comes to this police brutality. There are positions that the Democratic Party has now that they only got 3 months ago.
Yeah.
The Black people have been screaming about for 10, 15, 20 years. I'm 42 years old, and there are issues that I have been screaming about my entire adult life. The Democratic Party only started really acknowledging existed after George Floyd was murdered. Right?
Yeah.
There's not an article that I've written about George Floyd that I didn't write about Michael Brown, that I couldn't have written about Sean Bell, that I wouldn't have written about Amadou Diallo. All I have to do is change the names of the victims and the dates of the murder, right?
Yeah.
But there are Democrats who did not hear that argument until just now. So I understand when people are like, "What have the Democrats done for you?" I really do. I don't agree, but I understand. I respect, I guess is what I'm looking for. I respect the argument. The problem is that we have a binary choice, and again, the Republicans offer nothing. It is, if I may, just it is offensive to me that given my kind of background in history, I mean, Harvard-educated family man who grew up in a middle-class family with 2 parents who both went to college. I ain't the first in my family to do jack, right? Like that's just the truth, right? I stand on the shoulder of some giants. It is offensive to me that in my entire life, the Republicans have not made me one credible argument for why I should switch parties. That they've offered nothing to just regular folks like me who happen to be Black, who do not come from poverty, who do not come from necessarily a protest tradition. I'm just a regular dude, and they've got nothing to offer me. They can't keep their racism in their own mouths for 4 consecutive years to make me even think about voting for their party. That is an indictment, not on my free thinkingness. That is an indictment on them and their party.
And I would argue that just the thought process you went through demonstrate the free thinkingness that they say people need to have. A lot of people do. They don't just necessarily come to the conclusions the Republican Party would like them to. But yeah,
I always say to Black people, like there are so many different ways to express your free thinkingness other than in voting for a party that hates you. Right, yeah. There are so many other, I think Cori Bush, the congresswoman, the soon-to-be congresswoman from Missouri, who was called out at the RNC by the McCloskeys. I think she has said some of the best things about voting for Biden, who she doesn't agree with on like 9 out of 10 issues, right? But she knows that with Biden, she will have an opportunity to push that agenda somewhere. If we keep marching, if we keep working, if we keep pushing him, he can be pushed, he can be moved. Donald Trump thinks that we should be shot. And when you have a binary choice like that, there is no choice. The fact that there's no choice is the fault of Republicans.
I just saw an interview with Dr. Cornel West, who was, it was a scathing indictment of Joe Biden, but he came to effectively the same conclusion. And nobody's gonna look at him and say, what he needs to do is to start thinking freely. Like I think he's on that. I think he's doing that.
Get off that Democratic plantation, Cornell, right? Like, come on. Like, so again, there are arguments here. There are debates here worth having. I am happy to engage in those debates starting on January 21st.
Exactly, and we're going to. It's going to be a combative couple of years. Ellie, as always, appreciate your writing and appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a nice one.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.